Good afternoon. This is Councilmember Tui, and it's March 27th, 2024. We are at the Safe Community Committee meeting. I have Councilmember Fossey with me this afternoon. And today we are going to be looking at traffic safety camera implementation and outreach, as well as our buffer zone implementation update briefing. So we're going to start with our traffic safety camera implementation, and we have Corey Hart here to get us all up to date. Corey?
Great, thank you, Councilmember Tui. So good afternoon, Corey Hurt, City Traffic Engineer. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update of the city's photo enforcement program. The program is timely. In 2023, the state of Washington had overall crashes that were at a 10-year low. But statewide, 772 people were killed in crashes, up from 745 in 2022, which is now a 30-year high. That means that there are far fewer crashes, but more deadly crashes. Everett saw record levels in fatal crashes in 2022, and while the number fell slightly in 2023, it's still nearly double what we used to have 10 years ago. Three leading contributing factors are speed, drugs and alcohol related, and distracted driving. These contributing circumstances involve a relatively small subset of drivers that are driving irresponsibly, and for those drivers, enforcement plays a critical role in a safe roadway network. I appreciate the support from this committee and the leadership on a path forward to a safer Everett. So photo enforcement is not new, as we know. It's been allowed by state statute for 20 years and is now in use in 8 of the state's largest 10 cities, with only Vancouver and Spokane Valley that do not have programs. So far, public sentiment has been largely favorable based upon our outreach efforts. So what you see before you is the school speed zone location. We've talked about it before. I'll go over it briefly. Horizon Elementary, there's 2 cameras. Our vendor, Navoa Global, has been out installing and calibrating the 2 cameras along Casino Road for the school zone. All 4 legs of the intersection of 5th and Hardison are signed, and that's so turning drivers are also warned as they enter the school zone. Horizon Elementary along Casino Road is the highest volume street in Everett that has a school zone. It's also the highest operating speed of any school zone that we have measured. All cameras have to be signed for 30 days prior to activation, and so the signs were installed February 28th. Warnings are expected to start on April 3rd with citations in early May. And there's the location. So as we talked about before, there's 2 images that are taken and a 12-second video of the violation or the alleged violation. The first image is captured when the flash is activated. There's a 12-second video. It confirms for driver behavior and allows the reviewer to determine if the beacons say just turned on as the driver entered the school zone. Here's an example of what the warnings are going to look like in a sample image of an alleged violation. Data stamps showing the time and date, posted speed, vehicle speed, location, lane number and direction. A lot of information time stamped on there. The license plate close-up is captured from one of the high megapixel images. Just a quick reminder, later this summer we're going to be installing cameras for red light enforcement, 9 locations at 6 intersections. They're going to be northbound, southbound, Broadway and 16th, northbound and southbound, Rucker and 41st, northbound and eastbound, Evergreen and Casino, northbound 4th at Evergreen Way, southwestbound on Everett Mall Way at 7th Avenue, and eastbound on 112th at Evergreen Way. So photo enforcement at traffic signals also takes 2 photos and a 12-second video. Washington is what we call a yellow permissive state. That means any vehicle entering the intersection on any part of the yellow is legally standing. The alleged violations were reviewed, and the person who processes it before it goes to the court. So our outreach has been focused largely on educating people in Everett to avoid citations. We had an open house at Connect Casino with interpreters present. We provided translated slide decks and other translated posters and materials. We visited 10 neighbors so far, and I will say the reception has been largely positive, with some good and challenging questions, as there always is. And we're scheduled to go to 2 more neighborhoods in and around these locations. We met with the Diversity Advisory Board, got some good feedback on how to reach out to overburdened communities. One example is a suggestion of an interpretive sign in English and Spanish near the photo enforcement signs that provides information and a link to the website, which is also translated. We've had 3 news articles in the 3 largest newspapers in Snohomish County, the Herald, My Everett News, and the Tribune, to perform more outreach. And built into the program is the lowest fine allowed by statute at $124. There's a 30-day warning period, kind of a driver's last chance to be educated. It's not required under the statute or the ordinance, but we felt it was appropriate to let drivers know that we will be issuing fines within 30 days. There's a yearly reporting requirement under the state statute that requires us to provide the number of citations and number of accidents. I do hope to report sooner than a year to this committee that they're both dropping, and because both are measures of success. So outreach on this program has been higher than any of the typical safety programs I've worked on. Really, again, our goal has been to inform people who live nearest the photo enforcement location so they can avoid any necessary fines. We also sent out a survey of 5,000 postcards to people that lived within a half mile of the school. Initially, the survey results were 70% positive. As we started going out and doing more outreach and passing out cards with QR codes so people could go to the website and take the survey, we did notice that it normalized, but we have had a 51% positive, basically positive or very positive opinion, 42% negative, and 7% neutral. I will say that the typical reaction is after these go in that public sentiment does improve. So we also had the crossing guard out at Horizon, since the photo enforced signs went up, sent us a nice message that basically said she's already noticed speeds drop at the crossing when she worked out there. She's also one of our neighborhood chairs. So shared a bit of this information last time. Novoa Global went out and performed some studies last year and found that violations were higher than earlier projections. The good news is that we do anticipate the violations to drop precipitously. Based upon experience in other cities, we're expecting a 70% drop after our education campaign, outreach to businesses and the school. We expect it to drop by 70%. And at a year, we expect it to drop another 70%. But I hope to be able to come back to you and share that good news. So I was asked recently to do a revised projection of the revenue from the program. Because we do have higher numbers of anticipated citations, that means more revenue, but it also means some more expenses. We've had to incorporate some IT expenses, and we're going to have to install a couple electrical services that we found were deficient out in the field. The expenses also include staff members and our vendor monthly fees. So the point of this slide is not to show that the city is expected to generate a lot of revenue from this program, but really that the program will support itself and no additional funds will be needed from the general fund. So just in summary, starting next week, April 3rd, we are going to turn on the system out at Casino Road. We've done a pretty extensive outreach program, and I would say by and large, it's been mostly positive. Probably around the first part of May, we'll start issuing citations, and then we will begin with the process of starting up the red light camera program this summer. That should help us soften the number of citations the court has to process all at once and make sure that we have sufficient staff in place. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
I have just one quick, just clarify. So the 30 days at Horizon School starts on April 3rd. The 30-day grace period where they get notified, but they don't get a fine.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then had a question about the vendor monthly fee. Do you know off the top of your head what that is?
I do. It's $39.99 a month for each red light camera. And there'll be 9 of those, and it's $29.99 per month for the school zone. The reason for that is they give us a break because we have to pay all year, but we don't 9 months out of the year school's in session.
So even when we get down to 0 citations, or very few, we should be able to cover the costs of the program with the vendor at least.
That is correct.
Okay. Councilmember Bader, you have a question?
Thanks, actually, through Corey. So first of all, just want to confirm that we haven't adjusted, nor are we planning on adjusting the timing for the yellow light, correct?
Yeah, that's a common thing that we heard, and as a city traffic engineer, I can promise that we're not going to reduce any yellow times out there or shorten them. That could result in an artificial increase in rear-end collisions, and I'm not interested in that in a safety program.
Gotcha. And then if you can go back one slide, Corey, I noticed on that slide. So, well, projected total revenues almost are projected to double. Is that correct? And from 24 to 25, the third line
Yeah, most of that is because we're turning them on halfway through the year
in 25.
in 24.
They start up in the summer,
Right.
so it's not a full year.
So, okay, so our fiscal year is our calendar year, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then, I guess what I'm looking at is the next line down. Well, revenues go up almost $1 million. Revenue less expenses only go up 160,000. That's
Correct. Yeah, we're
not proportionate at all.
That's true. So next year, we will have some capital improvements we have to make out there. We have a couple electrical services that are going to be fairly expensive, and we decided not to put that on the vendor because they were expensive enough. They would not be able to recover the costs in the term of the contract.
Okay, and that's still okay, even though we expect violations to drop significantly once they're implemented, right? I mean, we're still, okay.
We are still revenue neutral based upon our projections, yes.
Okay. And last question is, how easy is it to move these cameras if we decide, hey, wow, really great work at this intersection, we're still having a real problem at this one that we didn't put cameras on, or even to rotate them? My neighborhood there, 16th and Broadway, I really actually I didn't pay attention. I had assumed that the worst problem was the 16th Street traffic violating the red light rather than the north-south Broadway traffic. If we find that's the case, is it easy to rotate them or to move them to a different intersection, or?
So rotating them, serving another leg is very doable under the contract. The contract does have provisions to add cameras as well. However, I would want, since this came from council, I would want to make sure I returned and got some concurrence on that was something we wanted.
Gotcha. But is it hard or easy to move these if we decided to move them to a different intersection?
No, they're all self-contained on a pole. It's fairly easy. It's just a matter of acquiring power.
Great, okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey, do you have any questions?
I guess I was wondering, so with the postcards, you're doing the ones that are within a half mile of the school. Are you doing it within a half mile of the other sites?
We're still talking about that, whether that's going to be necessary. We're going to take a look at what happens with the number of violations and how quickly it drops with the signs going in place. But it was our intent originally to go ahead and do the postcards again. Just whether it's necessary, we're still talking about that. So
Okay.
certainly take some feedback.
I believe I heard that in the North End, you still had to get a hold of some of the neighborhoods to meet with them. Is that correct, or were you able to schedule any of the North End neighborhoods?
So we've reached out to Northwest, and we haven't gotten a response, like a set date they're interested. We do have a date scheduled with Delta.
Okay, what about Bayside?
Bayside,
Riverside?
I do not believe we've heard back from either of those two neighborhoods.
Actually, you were at Riverside already. You did come to us. Somebody did come to us, yeah.
You're right, I did. You're right. I'm sorry, there's been 10 of them.
We didn't
yet-
give you good enough snacks, sorry about
All
that.
right, no, my apologies.
And is there anything that you're giving to council members to take out that may be going to these neighborhood meetings that they could hand out on your behalf of information, flyers, one-pagers?
Absolutely. We do have flyers in 3 languages, Russian, Spanish, and English, that we can provide you. And we have some small cards in the same languages that have a QR code where if people want more information, they can go to the website. It's we put up several pages of information there. So
Awesome, yeah. If I could get some copies of those to take out to my neighborhood meetings, that might
Yeah,
help.
maybe we can have them in Angie's office, on her desk there. We can grab them. That'd be great.
I can make that happen. Thank you.
Perfect.
Though we're hoping all the violators are out-of-town drivers, right?
We're sure of it.
Yeah. We, there was a news article recently in the Herald that said that in Linwood, 86% of the violations were issued to out-of-town residents. And so while I don't expect numbers on that order of magnitude, I do see that there are a lot of people that drive through Everett.
It'll be interesting at 41st and Wrecker because we get a lot of the Boeing traffic, so. Okay, any other questions for Corey? All right, thank you very much, Corey, appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move up to Julie Willie is here this afternoon for the buffer zone implementation update briefing. So welcome, Julie. Welcome.
It's been a while, so I forgot. So I have maps for you, and then I also just point out, we don't have any slides. This is intended to be kind of a brief update for y'all. And then also, anyone that would like to see this map, if you go to our city website, the easiest way to find it is just to type in buffer zones on the search engine. It says the little box right on the top that says, how can we help you? And buffer zones should take you to the updated website. That includes information about the original 2 buffer zones that were established last summer/fall, as well as this one that the mayor has approved just at the end of February at 3301 Lombard, which is adjacent or is the address of Andy's Place, a permanent supportive housing facility that is operated by Compass Health. And over the course of, I would say, the last 2 years, we've had several calls, concerns, complaints from the residents in that area. And then that was substantiated by the data that we did have indeed over 6 qualifying events that took place based on the ordinance that was created. And there was more than that, but 6 is kind of the minimum number that is required. And so in addition to kind of the police calls that we've had, the amount of public works, parking enforcement calls have also kind of reached a higher level than we would want in any one particular area. And we've just had a real let me say, outcry from our residents. They have worked so hard to try and advocate for a buffer zone, to the point that they went door to door and they got 40 signatures of people that supported a buffer zone. And we've been working with them to help them understand that this isn't a end-all be-all. This is a tool in the toolbox to help try and address the challenges that we're facing. And in addition to that, also trying to work closely with Andy's Place and the leadership at Compass Health to have a better dialogue between the service the service organization as well as the neighborhood, and to try and figure out kind of creative, innovative strategies to make sure that the residents' concerns are heard, and then to talk with the agency about potential program changes that they can make as well to try and lessen the impact. Throughout this process, we also learned of a couple challenging kind of chronic nuisance houses that are have also been being addressed, as well as just the criminal activity in the area. And our police department has addressed that through kind of some of their North End emphasis areas. So this is kind of the formality of making this be a buffer zone, so that we have just one more opportunity to educate people that they aren't allowed to be, on the sidewalks and in people's backyards and, residing in the alleys, but also to just generate that ongoing conversation to find further solutions. So that's,
So okay, do they, Andy's Place, do they have overnight, do they stay overnight there?
well, it is also a little bit of trickiness because Andy's Place is a permanent supportive housing facility. So there are residents there that have landlord-tenant privileges or rights that the organization has to change. But because they're in the process of remodeling, doing phase 2 and 3 of their redevelopment, they are doing some of their outpatient treatments and distribution of services at that location. And so it does bring more kind of coming and going. So once they're done with that remodeling, then ideally it will no longer have that same impact, or there won't be other people kind of coming to that location.
That's a couple years out.
Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big.
It's in
big
progress,
project.
right? Yeah.
It's a really big project.
Yeah, it's a very big project.
Okay. Councilmember Fosse.
So how long is this boundary for? And, yeah.
Well, the boundaries are kind of reviewed every 6 months. And the way that you supported the ordinance, it sunsets in December of 2025. So unless you continue it, and again, we've got legal here, so she can correct me if I screw up, but that, if the buffer zone ends at 2025, then it would end, that would be the final date. But there is no deadline for when that's over.
Okay. Just forgive me for making the comparison, but I know when some of our community were looking at trying to mitigate some of the issues that they experienced with some parking issues that, were, I guess, intersectional with other issues. It was a very cumbersome process to put, in kind of a high bar to put in place those special kind of parking districts. I don't know what specifically they're called, but like in Northwest around the hospital and some of the other things. And so when the neighborhood and some of the community wanted to put those into place, it's a huge hurdle to actually get there. And with this, like, the advocacy with the 40, and I've been around the area, so I understand the rationale and why people would sign on to support this. But just wondering, because one is such a high bar in order to enact something that is like also zoned protection-wise, that, I don't know, it just makes me think that when it comes to those other policies, maybe we can get something that is a little bit more in the middle for both of these.
I think we need to bring Corey back. Because, that is a different process with creating parking zones. And so I think that's the terminology maybe that you're looking for.
Yeah, and because especially when it's having to deal with public safety and related, I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, going forward in 2025, how we're looking at how these zones are set up, what those requirements and those thresholds are and things like that. Just might be something to consider fixing both of those policies.
Are you thinking about some, like, sort of the connection to this topic, some of the challenges with
I was just
RVs
gonna say RVs.
and that kind of parking? Or just the, like, we want a parking program because there's a lot of cars in the neighborhood and feels like we have limited parking options?
It expands beyond that. Basically, like improper use of the parking, and sometimes that gets associated with some of the drug use and some of those other things, and cars staying in particular areas for too long, and yeah, it's
Well, that could
intersectional
be-
with a lot of
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
safety issues.
It could be good to talk about that a little bit. I'm just, this is something that you probably saw some emails, and then I've been kind of working it, or like waiting for it to get worked. More like, kind of, that's what I do. Around the 900 block of Pine, the 1000 block, and no parking one side of the street, maybe it's both sides of the street, maybe it's not overnight, and kind of different. So there's some work in progress right there. That might be on part of what you're thinking of, I don't know. And I know there's been some conversations with some folks from the police department about the state laws that limit some of our ability to address issues like that. And like the no parking thing is good, but it seems like there might be some specific situations where somebody kind of just really knows the letter of the law and avoids those areas. And sometimes no parking just means you push it one block further out, right? But so, anyways, I think that might be maybe we can talk about that topic a little bit. And
It wasn't just exclusively that.
Right.
But I mean, like, it did wrap into a lot of other issues around.
well, that's why. Well, we've got to talk about what else we want to talk about at some point
Well,
today. So I'll put
permit,
that on.
like a permitted parking zone. And like, I know they do that around the high school. So certain times of the day, high school kids can't park there. And so maybe there's something that could be combined. Whether the residents have the permit to be there whenever they want, but if you're not a resident, there's limited parking.
Yes, exactly that.
Something like that,
And so I felt like the bar was so high, and that was a very cumbersome process. And when this originally went through, taking away the council vote in this process and just having the mayor be able to designate those things, I did have issue with that. But maybe a middle ground would be, raising the bar and having some sort of similar process, but making that one easier as well. And so that's just a little bit where my mind was going with some of that.
Councilmember Baber.
Thanks, Committee President. Julie, I apologize, I need to be caught up to speed on this a little bit, and I didn't do any studying ahead of time. Since I was off the council when this passed, what are the implications of a buffer zone? What does that mean? I mean, I'm not exactly sure if we designate it, what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, primarily, we want to use it as an opportunity to help connect individuals to services that aren't getting them. And so we have our social workers on an ability to do outreach. If someone is doing criminal behavior, to be able to explain to them that I guess criminal behavior, they're not supposed to do criminal behavior wherever they're at, but also just a tool for also our law enforcement to remind people that this is a protected area, because we want people to be able to access the services at Andy's Place. And some of the individuals that are at Andy's Place are trying to meet their service goals to, take care of like becoming sober, get treatment and things like that. And so oftentimes, we find some of these areas to become magnets for nefarious behavior and drug dealers and things like that. So it's also a way to just kind of change the environment a little bit and try and, shift it around so that it doesn't happen anymore. And then also oftentimes where there are well-meaning volunteers or organizations that want to give goods and services to congregations of people, that we're asking them to get a right-of-way use permit, so that we have the ability to understand where they are, where they're setting up, to work with them to ensure that they're taking away trash, to understand that they are in a neighborhood and that we don't want them to negatively affect the residents and the businesses that are there, because we also want them to have a high quality of life. And so it's kind of a softball, it doesn't have a huge amount of enforcement. And again, Lacey was instrumental in helping us to craft it. It's another tool in our toolbox to be able to try and help convince people to get services and also to understand that there are negative impacts to residents and businesses who also have a kind of a say in the city, and we're trying to kind of juggle all of those.
Well, that makes sense. I went to the Port Gardner neighborhood meeting in January, and a lot of comments on Andy's Place, and it really felt like it wasn't the residents of Andy's Place that were problematic. It was people who were coming in to take advantage of their challenges that they might have had there, and so people coming in from outside, and also felt like that Compass Health needed additional tools to be able to do this. That they kind of felt they were. It felt like to me like they were saying they took it as far as they could in terms of managing their property, but they can only manage to the sidewalk, and after that they couldn't, really do things to help mitigate the negative effect of people coming in to deal with their residents. So
I think that it also sparked really good conversations with Compass Health because they are relooking at their management plan. They are relooking at their security processes. They're looking at their guest policies. Like, for example, they have a policy around people, residents where they can smoke. But if you have a guest come over, then you can't bring your guest to the smoking area. So then you go outside and then you're smoking on the sidewalk, and then other people are walking by and like, hey, let's hang out with you. And then that's when kind of some of that nefarious behavior happens. And so also just looking at time of day when they're doing these, kind of distribution, so that when people are coming and going, and if it's right when kids are coming home from school, and even if there's just a perception of it not feeling safe, that maybe they could alter their timing. And so we've been able to, I think, start some good conversations with Compass to have them think a little bit more. We've talked to them about the CEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, so that they can look at their lighting and their fencing and their shrubs and their trees to see if there's other things that they can do, and the residents as well, right? Because the residents are, they're just that, where we all are, right? Where we care deeply about people and we want them to be successful, but at the same time, we don't want to have to be dealing with feces or, overdoses in our yards, and our kids want to play outside. And, so it's just this, that they have compassion, but they also are angry, so it's just that balance of all that, which I know you guys all know so well.
right, and sure came across at the Port Gardner neighborhood meeting, hearing from so many of those folks. So anyhow, good. Much appreciated in terms of trying to help this neighborhood and Compass Health do better, so they can feel better about the place and get the people the services they need. So.
Julie, is there any other area that might come up for a buffer zone before the end of the year?
Annie's Place was actually on our original list, but the mayor just wanted to do to start to just kind of see. So this one has always kind of been on the radar, and it just took us a little bit longer with schedules and all of the things that are going on to actually bring it to fruition. But as of right now, I don't have a specific area that we're talking about. Okay. The other two, we kind of just did it's interesting because you can't necessarily say that the buffer zone was the reason that an area is better, but anecdotally, the bridge over by Fred Meyer is no longer congregated with people, and so there's better access. Our law enforcement have done kind of additional outreach and enforcement in those areas, so we've been able to try and address some of the challenges that were in those areas because we focused on it. And so for now, it just seems like a positive step forward.
And I assume that you will come back to the council before the end of the year to do an extension on this? Is that what the thoughts?
2025 is when it ends.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah,
2025.
so we
Okay,
still have a
so
little
another
bit
year.
of time, yeah.
Okay. Great. Anybody else have questions for Julie on the buffer zone? We probably have questions for Julie on other things, but we will. That's not on the agenda.
Thank
That
you.
wouldn't be fair. Okay, thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much,
you,
Julie.
yeah.
Okay, Jennifer, what do you have for us?
Well, just what you might want to talk about in the future. I made a note about kind of fleshing out what kind of parking and public safety issues, what that discussion might look like. We have scheduled an update on the Block Watch, the community awareness team. The title's in flux, but that's kind of pending finish of that. But an update on that project next month.
Okay.
We will be ready to do, so that's all we've got for next month. For May, we'll be ready to do a little preview of the draft hazard mitigation plan update, relates to the CERT program also. In June, downtown street safety, we're kind of hoping, I know that's something that has been raised and it's a big topic with lots of folks that are part of that, but that's what I've got on the extended agenda.
Is there, I know that there was something about, at one point, we had an ordinance on empty storefronts. That's been a few years, and then it came back up, I think Councilmember Ryan brought it up, maybe?
Yeah, they've talked about it in Parks and Quality of Life Committee.
Okay.
They do economic development topics, and so that's
So
something
maybe
that-
we can throw that into that piece on downtown safety, because I know you can tell right away when the empty storefronts really can have a lot of problems, so that would be great to hear what the status is of that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Councilmember Fosse.
Is there any plan to give further updates on state policies that might have passed that will impact the way we do any sort of public safety
That'd be great.
approaches?
We can do that. Yeah.
And I just say for me, anything you can move forward, any of those other bullet points, almost ran someone down who was jaywalking this morning, and my wife hadn't seen him. I might not be sitting here talking to you guys right now. So would be, grateful for any of these topics, which I hear about on a regular basis, whether it's out of neighborhood meetings or just talking to people in the community. So, and I know obviously things take time to move forward, but if you can tee any of these, you can tee up for us in the next couple of
So
months.
what does that conversation look like about?
Well, let's see,
I know you
noise ordinance amendment updates, obviously
Okay.
is one of those ones that you have
Yes.
further down there, and again, I hear about those, speed limits, certainly, my just related personal experience on, it seems the overabundance of jaywalking, even in the face of traffic, that puts the jaywalkers at great danger, et cetera. Traffic calming and arterial speeds. Sorry, I don't mean to give you a laundry list, but.
Well, they're on the list, so it's
yeah.
okay to
Right,
note
right.
the
So,
ones that you're
but
most
again, I know all
interested
these
in.
things take time, and some of them are more complicated than others. But I just if there's anything, is block watch enough for an entire committee
No,
meeting?
I
And
mean,
if
it's
not,
not.
is there something that could be prepped for any of those other items that could be prepped
Yeah.
that don't quite require as much investment? So, sorry.
And I know the Parks Committee has been looking at lighting and all kinds of safety features, and we don't need a full briefing on it, but it would just, if we could have a little update, because we got just a taste of it at council.
Yeah.
But it would be nice, because that has been brought up by this committee also. And I know several
we can definitely do
neighborhoods
that.
are wanting to have some answers on that too.
Yeah, anyways, I don't need to do it right now. I'll note it and that's something we can
Yeah,
add for.
That'd be great.
And probably we can make something happen with the legislative state impacts. And I haven't followed up on the arterial speed limits in a minute, and so maybe that's something that I know the mayor is on board and likes this idea, and so maybe we can talk a little bit about the mechanics of that, or have.
And we did
bring
reduce
Corey
Evergreen
back
Way,
and-
right?
yeah.
We did that, so it'd be curious to,
Yeah.
I mean, I notice people don't pay much attention to the sign, so it'd be nice to get the flashing ones, they do catch your attention, so.
Well, to the Evergreen Way point, is there some data that traffic has for us that we could bring back just to see what kind of impact that's having? Useful for me to know.
Well, they were doing a study on looking at reducing the speed levels across different arterials, right? Is that the one were mentioning, the study that was going to come back and they were going to provide us with details? You guys were getting grant funding for it.
The Safe Streets for All, like sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure. That's the same thing, sidewalk and pedestrian, but anyways.
I don't know if that if that was the study, I just remember when neighbors were coming forward and saying about particular areas in Riverside, about they wanted to reduce the speed limit, and so we were pushing for that, and then administration had come back and said, well, actually, we're doing a grant funding and looking at specifically just the arterials, but we were talking about like beyond that, if there
Yeah.
was some token ones that we can reduce that are target areas that.
Oh,
seem
I
to be-
remember this now.
Okay.
Because we sat here and you guys were like, yeah, whatever, let's just do it now. It was kind of, I think, in conjunction with the Safe Streets for All piece, but anyways, it's been a few months now, so maybe there's a different update that we could look at.
I would love to know whatever the data piece that they were going to bring back that we were waiting for,
Yeah.
when that's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, I'll find out. I don't remember. I think it's still a ways out, but maybe there's an update, so.
Thank you.
For me, it was seeing what impact the Evergreen Way speed reduction had, because that did happen, right? Okay, gotcha. I guess I didn't reduce my speed enough to, anyway, sorry, okay.
And also, I know with the ARPA funding, Councilmember Schwab was going to do some traffic speed limit signage with the blinking lights on Mukilteo Boulevard or somewhere
Yeah, he had
in
two
his
spots,
district.
I
So I'd be
think.
curious if that's been implemented, and if so, are they seeing a big difference there? Just, I don't even know if they're up yet or not.
Yeah,
We
I
can
don't know.
probably find out. Okay. Okay, anything else that's not on the pending items or that we want to rise or take to the top of the list? Anything for you, Councilmember Fosse? Okay. Conveyor?
All of it at the top of the list. No.
All of it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
All right, anything else for us today, Jennifer?
No?
All right, well, thank you, and that concludes our Safe Community Committee meeting for today. Thank you.